You ever believe someone so completely, so blindly, that when the truth finally shows up, it hits like a freight train? That was me, with my sister. For decades, I thought she had our family's best interests at heart. Turns out she had something else in mind. Money, control, and a lie so big it almost tore our bloodline apart. Stick around. You're going to want to hear how I went from the quiet brother in the background to the man who blew the lid off everything. My name's Joe Ransley. I'm 67 years old, Vietnam-era Navy vet. Spent most of my life working blue-collar jobs, construction, mechanics, a few years on the road as a trucker. Nothing flashy, just honest work. I grew up in rural Missouri, one of 4 kids, 2 brothers and a sister, Darlene. She was the youngest and the loudest. Even as a kid, she had a way of getting people to do what she wanted. Big smile, crocodile tears. Daddy's little girl. After our mom passed in the late 90s, everything changed. Dad got quieter, the house got colder, and Darlene, she started showing up a lot more often. I figured it was her way of coping. Turns out it was her way of laying groundwork. You see, when Dad got sick, late-stage COPD, we all knew the end was coming. What we didn't know was that Darlene had already taken the reins. She was handling his paperwork, she said, helping with bills, taking care of things. I didn't question it. Neither did my brothers. We trusted her. That was mistake number 1. Dad passed on a Sunday morning in 2014. I still remember the smell of black coffee and pine cleaner when I walked into the house that day. Darlene met me at the door, eyes red, tissues in hand. "He's gone, Joe," she said. "He went in his sleep." I hugged her. I cried. We buried him next to Mom on a gray Wednesday afternoon. After the funeral, we met back at the house. Darlene poured coffee and sat us all down. "I need to go over a few things," she said. "Dad left a will. It's not what we expected." I remember her pausing like she was gearing up for a performance. "Dad left everything to me." Silence. My younger brother Tom was the first to speak. "What do you mean, everything?" "The house, the land, the savings account. He said I was the only one who really showed up. Said he trusted me to make sure things were handled right." She pulled out a manila envelope, slid out a piece of paper. "Here's the will. He signed it last year." I looked at the paper and something inside me twisted. The signature. It was shaky, barely legible. The kind of penmanship I remembered from his hospital bed, not the kitchen table where he used to write checks every Saturday morning. Still, we didn't push back. Not then. Because who wants to believe their sister could lie like that? Over the next few years, things got weird. Darlene sold the house, our family home, for cash. Said it was too much to maintain. She kept the land and leased it to a developer. My dad's old Ford pickup disappeared. Said she donated it. Even the antique clock my grandfather built, gone. Every time we asked, she had an answer. "It's what Dad wanted," she'd say. "I'm just following through." But something didn't sit right. Not with me. And not with our oldest brother, Alan. He started digging, quietly, carefully. He'd always been the smart one. Worked as a paralegal for 30 years. In 2019, Alan called me one night. I was watching the Cardinals game, eating leftover ribs. "Joe," he said, "I need you to hear something. I found an older will, dated 2 years before the one Darlene showed us. It splits everything 4 ways. Equally." My blood ran cold. "You sure it's real?" "Absolutely. Filed with Dad's lawyer. I checked the signature, the notary stamp, the witness log. It's legit." "Then what the hell happened?" There was a long pause. "I think Darlene forged the newer one." I didn't want to believe it. I mean, yeah, she was always dramatic, always working an angle. But forging a will? Cheating her own brothers out of our father's legacy? Still, the signs were all there. The timing, the control, The quick sale, the disappearing heirlooms. It felt like betrayal in its purest form. Alan and I decided to confront her, just the two of us. Tom wasn't ready. He hated conflict. We invited her to lunch, neutral ground, a diner near the old high school. She showed up with her usual flair. Big sunglasses, a scarf around her neck like she was Audrey Hepburn at a Sunday matinee. We didn't waste time. "Darlene," I said, "we found another will, one that splits everything 4 ways. Her smile didn't budge. "You're mistaken." "No, we're not," Alan added. "It's dated, notarized, and legally binding. Filed with Dad's lawyer in 2012. She sipped her coffee. "Then I guess Dad changed his mind." "Or you did," I said, leaning forward. "We think the newer will was forged." That was when the mask cracked, just for a second. Her eyes narrowed, jaw tightened. Then she stood up. "I don't have to listen to this," she snapped. "You're both bitter and jealous. Dad didn't trust you." And with that, she walked out. I stared at my coffee cup for a long time after that. Alan finally broke the silence. "We need a lawyer," I nodded. "We're going to court." Hiring a lawyer wasn't just about legal protection, it was about respect. About finally standing up for what was right, even if it meant going to war with our own blood. Alan took the lead on that. He had connections. Years working in the legal field meant he knew who to trust. He brought in a probate attorney named Brenda Carlin. Sharp as a tack, didn't waste time sugarcoating anything. First time we met, she looked me in the eye and said, "If what you're saying is true, you're looking at a civil fraud case and possibly criminal charges if we prove forgery. But we'll need evidence. Cold, hard evidence." Alan handed her copies of both wills, the one Darlene produced and the older one from Dad's lawyer. Brenda flipped through them like she was scanning for landmines. "This new signature is shaky. Very shaky. And look at the notary line. It's blank. That alone is a red flag. I'll need handwriting analysis and access to your father's medical records. If he was mentally unfit at the time of this will, we have a case." That's when it hit me. This wasn't going to be quick or clean. This was going to be a slow, grinding storm. And we had just stepped into it. The first court date was set for March 2020. We barely got the paperwork in before the pandemic turned the world upside down. Zoom hearings, delays, depositions postponed for months. But in a way, that gave us time. Time to dig, time to build a stronger case. What we found, well, it chilled me to the bone. Turns out Darlene had been funneling money out of Dad's accounts months before he passed. Little withdrawals here and there, a few thousand for home repairs, even though she didn't own a home. Transfers marked gift from an account Dad hadn't touched in years. Brenda brought in a forensic accountant. He combed through bank records and flagged over 78,000 in questionable withdrawals. That wasn't just greed, that was premeditated theft. Alan and I decided to tell Tom everything. We met him at his garage. He's a mechanic, owns a small shop off Route 12. I remember him wiping his hands on an oil rag, shaking his head as we laid it all out. "She forged the will?" he whispered. We nodded. "And stole from Dad while he was still alive?" Another nod. Tom sat down hard on an overturned bucket. "I always thought she was bossy, controlling. But this..." He looked up at us, eyes watering. "You need me for court?" "Only if you're ready," I said. He nodded again, slower this time. "Let's do it." The court hearing was surreal. We were in a video call, each of us in separate rooms, Darlene included. She hired her own lawyer, a slick guy named Peterson. Too polished, too smiley. You could tell he was used to spinning straw into gold. The judge was a no-nonsense woman named Harriet McMillian. Early 60s, steel gray hair, tired eyes. You could tell she'd seen it all. She listened carefully as Brenda laid out our side. The forged will, the missing notary, the shady financial moves. Then came the handwriting analyst. He didn't mince words. In my professional opinion, the 2013 signature presented on the newer will is inconsistent with Mr. Ransley's verified writing samples. The strokes are uneven and there are signs of hesitation typical of a traced or forged signature. Peterson pushed back hard. So you're saying it's a forgery? The analyst shrugged. I'm saying it's highly suspect, and in my field that's a red flag. Then Darlene took the stand. I watched her on screen. She wore pearls, a tidy blazer. Her hair curled just right. She looked more like someone auditioning for a Hallmark special than a defendant. She cried. "Daddy loved me," she said, voice cracking. "He told me so. He said he wanted me to have it all. He trusted me." Brenda was ready. "Did your father sign this will in front of a notary?" Darlene paused. "He did. Can you provide the name of the notary?" Another pause. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. Can you produce any witness who saw him sign it?" "No. It was just us. That was it. No notary, no witnesses, no credibility." Brenda hammered the point home. "So you expect this court to believe that your father, an ailing man with declining mental clarity, signed a legally binding will in secret with no one else present and no notary?" Darlene blinked, her voice suddenly very small. "Yes, we knew then." Her story was crumbling. And yet, even with everything stacked against her, she doubled down, claimed the signature was real, claimed Dad whispered his dying wishes to her alone, claimed the rest of us were lying. It was like watching a gambler go all in with a busted hand. Then came the turning point. Brenda pulled out a medical report dated just 2 weeks before the new will was allegedly signed. It showed Dad was on heavy medication, including morphine, cognitively impaired, barely responsive. Brenda looked straight into the webcam. "Your Honor, the defense claims this will was signed by a man who, at the time, couldn't remember what day it was. That's not just unbelievable, it's cruel." Judge McMillian leaned back. "Thank you, Ms. Carlin. I've heard enough for today. We'll reconvene next week." And just like that, the video call ended. But the tension, it stayed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my porch, drinking cheap bourbon from a chipped glass. The wind was picking up, and the trees outside were rustling like they had something to say. All I could think was, how did we get here? How did a family, my family, end up in a courtroom fighting over the scraps of a man who gave everything he had? And yet deep down, I knew the answer. It wasn't about money. Not really. It was about truth. And finally, after years of silence, I was ready to speak it. When the court reconvened the following week, it didn't feel like a legal hearing. It felt like Judgment Day. Not just for Darlene, but for all of us. I showed up early that morning. Shirt tucked in, hair combed back, boots polished. Might have been a Zoom courtroom, but I still respected the weight of the moment. Alan logged on from his office. Tom was at his kitchen table with a mug of black coffee and that 1,000-yard stare only mechanics and old soldiers seem to have. Brenda sat poised as ever. Papers lined up, voice calm and collected. Darlene? She logged on late. Same pearls, same practiced face. But this time her smile didn't reach her eyes. Judge McMillian opened with a few words. "This court has reviewed all documents and testimony. My decision is based on evidence, not emotion." That line stuck with me, because if she'd ruled on emotion alone, this would have been over in 5 minutes. She took a sip of water and continued. "The 2013 will presented by the defendant, Ms. Darlene Ransley, is found to be invalid. It lacks proper notarization, and compelling evidence suggests it may have been forged while the testator was cognitively impaired." I leaned back in my chair. My throat tightened. The court will recognize the 2011 will which splits Mr. Ransley's estate evenly among his 4 children. It was done. After 6 years of questions, whispers, and gut instincts, we had the truth in writing. Alan nodded silently. Tom let out a breath I didn't know he'd been holding. And Darlene? She froze. Not a tear, not a word, just cold, stunned silence. You'd think that'd be the end of it. That once a judge laid down the law, a family could start healing. But for us, it got darker before it got better. The real shock wasn't the forged will. It was what we uncovered next. Brenda advised us to do a full audit of everything Darlene touched. Every account, property, asset, and heirloom. She called it asset tracing. I called it digging up skeletons. And man, did we find a few. The first bombshell, a second bank account in Dad's name, one none of us knew existed. Opened just a few months before he passed. Darlene was listed as a co-signer. Guess what was missing? Over $90,000 gone, vanished, no explanation, no trail. That's when Tom finally broke down. I remember Dad talking about savings. Said he'd been putting money away for the grandkids' education. Said it was supposed to be a surprise. Well, the only surprise was where it went. Then came the second blow. Alan found out the family land, 40 acres out past County Line Road, had been quietly transferred into a shell company. Guess who was listed as the managing director? Darlene. And guess who the buyer was? Her boyfriend. The one we didn't even know she had. I sat on my porch that night. Same spot, same chipped glass. This time I didn't drink. I just stared. Stared at the trees. The stars. The dark silhouette of what used to be my family. There's something about betrayal that cuts deeper when it comes from someone who grew up in the same kitchen as you, ate the same Sunday dinners, shared the same bedtime stories. I kept asking myself, why? Why did she need it all? Why not just ask for her share? Why lie? The next week, Darlene called me. I stared at the screen when her name popped up. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity, that old devil still had a grip on me. "Joe," she said, voice low. "I didn't think you'd pick up." "Wasn't going to," I replied. I messed up. That's one way to put it. There was a pause. Then her voice cracked. "I just wanted Dad to see me as something more. I was always the screw-up, the one who never had it together. I thought if I handled everything, took charge, maybe he'd finally see me as capable. That's not what he wanted, Darlene. He wanted his kids to take care of each other, not rob each other blind." More silence. Then she whispered something I didn't expect. "There's one more thing you don't know." My stomach dropped. "What?" "I lied about Mom's will, too." That was the moment the ground gave way again. She told me that years ago, after Mom died in '98, Dad was too broken to deal with legal paperwork. So Darlene offered to help. Turns out Mom had left specific instructions in a handwritten note. Nothing legally binding, but clear in intent. She wanted her jewelry to go to Tom's daughter. She wanted Alan to have the antique bookshelf she'd refinished with him when he was a boy. She wanted her wedding band buried with Dad. None of that happened. The jewelry was pawned. The bookshelf was sold. The wedding band? Darlene kept it and wore it for years. I hung up the call without another word. No yelling, no threats. Just quiet, bitter acceptance. That's what betrayal does. It doesn't always burn. Sometimes it just freezes everything. The next morning, I met Alan and Tom for coffee. I told them everything. Alan shook his head. "She didn't just steal from Dad, she erased Mom." Tom looked out the window. "We need to make it right, somehow." Alan agreed, but I didn't speak, because I already knew what I had to do. You ever get that feeling in your chest when something's been left undone for too long? Like an itch under the skin? That was me after Darlene's confession. She didn't just take money. She took memories, took Mom's wishes, tore them up, and scattered the pieces to the wind. And for what? Recognition? Control? Maybe just because she could. I knew one thing. If we didn't speak the truth out loud, if we didn't set the record straight, then the story of our family would be whatever she made up. And I couldn't live with that. Alan and I started digging again. This time, it wasn't about court orders or legal battles. It was about legacy. We tracked down the pawn shop where Darlene had sold the jewelry. One of the receipts had her name on it, dated back in 2002, and believe it or not, the shop owner still had a few of the pieces in his back vault, including the ruby brooch our mom used to wear every Christmas. He'd kept it because it was too nice to melt down. Said it reminded him of his own mom. We offered to buy it back. He said, "You don't have to. It belongs to your mother. You boys take it home." I'm not ashamed to say I cried in the car. Next, we tracked the bookshelf. The one Mom refinished with Alan in 1986, the summer she quit her job to stay home after her surgery. Alan remembered the guy who bought it, a former neighbor. Turns out he still had it. Same condition. Same scent of old wood and lemon oil. When we told him what it meant, he helped us load it into the back of my truck. That afternoon, we placed the brooch in a glass case on that shelf. Not in a bank. Not in a vault. Right there in Alan's living room, where it belonged. But the wedding ring? That was different. Darlene had it, and she wasn't giving it up. Tom was the one who suggested we speak with her in person. Said maybe, just maybe, there was still a part of her that cared. So we went to her house, middle of the afternoon, late spring. The air was heavy with magnolia and tension. She answered the door in silence, eyes red like she hadn't slept. "What now?" she asked. "We want to finish this," I said. She let us in. The place was colder than I remembered, clean, lifeless, like a model home someone forgot to live in. We sat in the living room. No small talk, no coffee. Just the three of us and 100 pounds of silence between us. Alan was the first to speak. "We found the brooch, got the bookshelf too." Her eyes flicked up. Something in them shifted. Maybe regret, maybe not. I leaned forward. "But we want the ring, the one Mom asked to be buried with Dad." She laughed, bitter and sharp. "You think you get to waltz in here and rewrite history?" "No," I said. "We're trying to fix what you erased." Darlene stood and walked to her bedroom. We waited. She came back holding a tiny velvet box. "I was gonna pawn it," she whispered. "God help me, but I couldn't." She handed it over. That ring was simple. Gold band, faint scratch near the setting where Dad once dropped it on the driveway. To anyone else it was just jewelry. To us it was a promise. We buried it the next weekend. Not a formal ceremony. Just the three of us at the cemetery under a quiet sky. We dug a small hole beside Dad's headstone and placed the ring inside, right above his casket. Tom said a prayer. Alan laid a rose. I stood there in silence, hand on the stone. "Sorry it took us this long, Dad." After that, we didn't hear from Darlene for a while, until a letter showed up at my place. It was short. No apology, no excuses, just 5 words. "Tell the truth about me." No name, no return address. But I knew her handwriting. I read it a dozen times that night. Tell the truth about me. What truth? That she stole? That she lied? That she was once the little girl who held my hand crossing the street on our first day of school? The truth is, Darlene didn't start out bad. She started out scared. Scared of being forgotten. Of not being good enough. Of living in the shadow of 3 older brothers and 2 dead parents. And somewhere along the way, that fear turned to bitterness. then greed, then betrayal. And the girl we grew up with, the one who used to laugh until her nose crinkled, was gone. But the thing about truth, it doesn't just expose, it heals. When you face it, when you stop pretending and just say the thing that needs saying, it carves a path back to yourself. That's what I chose to do, to tell the story, not for revenge, but for remembering. After the ring was buried, something shifted in the air between us. Me, Tom, and Alan. We didn't say it out loud, but I think we all felt it. For the first time in years, we weren't walking around with that invisible weight pressing on our shoulders. We had faced the lie, stared it down, and somehow come out the other side with our heads up. The legal mess was behind us. The house was long gone. But the heart of our family, the part that mattered, was starting to beat again. Funny how that works. Sometimes you lose the home but keep the hearth. We started doing Sunday dinners. Nothing fancy. Just burgers or brisket on the grill. Alan's wife made cornbread. Tom brought beer. I handled dessert, usually something from the bakery down the road. We'd sit on Alan's back porch, the sun hanging low behind the trees, and for a few hours we weren't the brothers who'd been lied to. We were just brothers. We talked about Dad, how he used to whistle when he read the paper, how he swore by duct tape for every repair, how he'd sing Johnny Cash off-key but with full confidence. We talked about Mom, how she used to call us her gang of four, how her lemon pie could settle any fight, how her laugh could soften any storm. Sometimes we'd cry, but mostly we laughed. There was always one empty chair. At first we avoided it, didn't mention her name, didn't want to reopen the wound, but wounds only fester when ignored. One Sunday in July, Tom finally broke the silence. "Y'all think she's okay?" He didn't have to say who. We knew. Alan sipped his beer. "I don't know. I try not to think about her." I looked at that empty chair rocked by the wind. "She's not a villain," I said. "She's not a victim either. She's just broken." None of us argued, because we knew it was true. About a month later, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it ring, then it rang again. I picked up. It was Darlene's voice, soft, different. "Joe, it's me." I didn't answer right away. "I'm not calling to fight," she said. I heard you've been doing Sunday dinners." "How'd you hear that?" "I still talk to Aunt Louise," she told me. "Said you boys were laughing again." I waited. I was wondering if maybe I could stop by, just to see, just once. I closed my eyes. The old me might have said no, shut the door, burned the bridge, buried the key. But something about her voice. It wasn't the same Darlene who spun stories in court or tossed guilt like confetti. It was the little sister from long ago, I told the guys. Alan was against it. "She doesn't deserve a seat." Tom was quiet. Then he said, "Maybe she doesn't, but maybe we do." So we set an extra plate the following Sunday. Darlene showed up in a plain blue dress. No pearls, no makeup, just her. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but like someone who'd finally realized the world didn't owe her anything. She brought potato salad. Didn't speak much at first. Just listened, watched. Halfway through dinner, she told a story about Dad fixing her bike when she was 6. We remembered it differently because we fixed the bike, but we let her tell it. At the end of the night, she helped clear plates, didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't make excuses, just said, "Thanks for letting me sit." Alan still didn't speak to her directly, but he didn't stop her either. The next week, she didn't show, nor the one after. But something had changed, not in her, but in us. Because that empty chair, it didn't sting like it used to. We'd faced it, faced her, and we were stronger for it, Tom fixed up Dad's old truck, by the way. The one Darlene claimed was donated. Turns out it had been parked behind a storage unit under a false name. Alan found the VIN number in some old papers, and with a little elbow grease and a lot of cussing, Tom brought it back to life. We drive it every now and then, usually to the cemetery. One time we even let Alan drive. He stalled it twice. We laughed so hard we couldn't breathe. Dad would have loved that. You know, there's something about facing lies that doesn't just expose the people who told them. It reveals who you are. Are you the kind of man who turns bitter, or the kind who turns the page? I'd like to think we chose right. Not perfectly, not easily, but truthfully. About 6 months after that last Sunday dinner, I found an envelope in my mailbox, no return address, just my name written in blue ink, careful handwriting. Inside was a single folded piece of paper. Darlene's letter. Joe, I don't expect you to read this, and I definitely don't expect you to forgive me. But I owe you the truth. I owe all of you something I should have said a long time ago. I lied. I stole. And I made it worse by pretending I was right. Maybe I thought if I doubled down I wouldn't have to face the shame. But the truth sat in me like a stone every day. I wasn't strong enough to do the right thing then. You were. I see that now. I've started over. Got a job cleaning rooms at a nursing home downstate. Doesn't pay much, but the people are kind. Some of them even remind me of Mom and Dad. I keep their pictures on my dresser. I talk to them sometimes. I tell them about the garden I started behind the building, tomatoes and lavender. I know I can't come back, not really. But I wanted you to know. I finally remembered who I am. Not the liar, not the thief. Just Darlene. The little sister who used to sneak cookies with you at midnight. Thank you for not hating me, even when I deserved it. Tell Alan I still have that bookshelf in my dreams. Tell Tom he was always the kindest one. And Joe, thank you for standing up to me. Someone had to. I'm glad it was you. Love, Darlene. I read it 3 times. Then I set it down and cried. Not because I was angry anymore, but because part of me, deep down, had waited 20 years to hear those words. And because when someone finally owns their story, even if it's messy, there's peace in that. A week later, I drove out to the cemetery. Just me this time. I brought a folding chair, a cup of gas station coffee, and the letter. I sat between their graves, Mom's and Dad's. Hey, I said out loud, she's trying. The breeze rustled the grass. A hawk circled overhead. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't angry anymore. You see, when you grow up, nobody warns you about how much family can hurt you. Not strangers, not enemies. Family. But they also don't tell you how much you can survive, and that survival doesn't mean building walls, it means standing tall. It means saying what needs to be said, it means telling the truth even when it shakes the ground. Looking back, I realized that standing up to my sister wasn't just about exposing her lies. It was about reclaiming our story. About saying, this is what happened, and this is what we did about it. It was about choosing honor over comfort, and choosing legacy over silence. These days, the old truck still runs. Tom keeps it clean as a whistle. Alan drives it slow like it's made of glass. And I just sit in the passenger seat and smile, because we made it through. Sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is tell the truth to the people you love the most. But it's also the thing that sets everyone free. Whether it's your brother, your sister, or even yourself, stand up when it matters. Even if your voice shakes, even if it costs you peace in the short run. Because silence protects, but truth protects the future. Give it a like. It helps us reach more people. Hit subscribe for more real, emotional family stories. Comment below. Have you ever had to stand up to someone in your own family? Let's talk about it. You're not alone.